The clarity of an organization needs to go beyond the thematic goal, and it must define what success looks like every day, not just during a season of focus. And so if the rally cry answers the question, what's most important right now? The standard operating objectives answer the question, what's most important?
Yes.
Period.
This is the Organizational Health Advantage podcast with Keith Hadley and James Felton, principal consultants at Table Group. They're in the business of coaching leaders to build strategic focus and cultural alignment that leads to amazing results. Welcome to the Org Health Advantage.
Hello, and welcome back to the Organizational Health Advantage podcast. That's a really long name. But anyway,
yes,
I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Keith Hadley. Keith, how are you doing?
James, I'm doing great. It's hotter than blazes here in Chicago, but you're from Phoenix. I can't complain.
No, it could be worse there with all the humidity and stuff.
Actually is.
Yeah. But I'm excited to be on here with you, and it's just you and me, no guest today, and we're talking about something that we loosely cover in our offsites, and these are the standard operating objectives that come in into the conversation when we're talking about the rally cry, thematic goal.
Don't fast forward the podcast. That was like the most boring way to set up a podcast. So I'm just telling our listeners, stick with us. This is going to be amazing.
Yes.
That wasn't judging you, James. It's just like the standard operating objective is so boring.
Yes. In fact, we say it's, maybe a title for this is the most important thing we don't focus on.
I like that. I was thinking it's like the most underappreciated element of the advantage, and we throw ourselves into that. Like it's
totally.
Seriously, we might spend an hour and a half, debating the rally cry, the answer to the question, what's most important right now, and then breeze over the standard operating objectives in like 5 minutes with the CEO at break.
Yeah.
But the reason we're talking about this today, James, is like we've actually had a couple of very, very recent, very specific client situations where it was like, doggone it, we are not talking about these enough. And we've seen some kind of common pitfalls, and I don't think we've ever talked about these on our podcast. Or I'm not even sure that Pat Lencioni has talked about this on the At the Table podcast, which he's been doing this longer than we have. So this is like new territory that we're going to rock your world.
Well, and we bring it up at the thematic goal moment because they fit in the scorecard of the thematic goal with its defining objectives.
Right.
And then we think, well, let's also check in on the standard operating objectives, which are basically the vital signs of the business. Thank you, Joyce Schaefer.
Yes, good call.
And it's the things that you want to check in on. You would never want them to not be important.
Right.
They're important today. They're important next week. They're important next month, next quarter, next year, the following year. Like these are how we know we're running a successful business. In fact, we often say if a leader went on a long vacation for like a month, they could call back from the airport on their way back into the country and check in with their next in line or with the team and say, how are we doing on the standard operating objectives?
Right.
It's like, okay, now I have a good idea on where the company's at in my absence.
Yeah. So to quote Pat Lencioni from The Advantage, he talks, kind of his one-liner on this is like the clarity of an organization needs to go beyond the thematic goal, and it must define what success looks like every day, not just during a season of focus. And so if the rally cry answers the question, what's most important right now? The standard operating objectives answer the question, what's most important?
Yes.
Period.
Always.
And so now I'm wondering, like, why don't we emphasize that more with our clients? I think it's because we kind of assume that they've got that already. Like, we've never met a team that doesn't have any objectives. And yet we have helped produce plenty of playbooks that we deliver back to the client with blank standard operating objectives because we never talked about it. And we all just assume that we are all on the same page. Yep. And it's like, well, you guys have this, right?
Yep.
And I think we do see some common mistakes.
Right.
So kind of from our handout, the defining objectives define how we accomplish the thematic goal, and they're temporary, shared by all members of the same team. The standard operating objectives are permanent, shared by all members of the team. And I do like how Joyce Schaefer said it recently. Just think about that vital signs, like physical health. You go to the doctor and they would say, check your pulse, your temperature, your weight, your cholesterol, your blood pressure. And that's probably it at the outset. And then if something looked weird or wrong, or you had a specific symptom, they might start doing more blood work and getting levels and ratios. But the vital signs.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we would probably say there are a few buckets that we should pull from to find these standard operating objectives.
Yep.
And our watch out to clients is don't get so in the weeds that you have 12 to 15 to 20 of these.
Right.
But somewhere the right number is probably what, Keith? Would you say like around 8, maybe 8 to 10?
Man, that's debatable. I was excited about going low, like 6.
Yeah.
And then talked to a couple of colleagues. They're like, 6 is too few. Like they don't know any businesses that could actually get it down to 6.
Yeah.
But I do think that if we're more than 10, we're starting to get lost in the weeds.
Yeah.
And so, James, we were talking about this idea of a balanced scorecard. And if you were to start with what we call the big 4, like any balanced scorecard for any business, any organization, anywhere, let's start with, we've got to obviously have a financial metric,
right?
Something like profitability, which brings together both top and bottom line, or maybe it's growth, but we've got to measure our finances. Secondly is we've got to measure productivity. Whatever it is that we do, how productive are we at doing it?
Yep.
We have to talk about our customers and their loyalty, which might involve either looking at satisfaction or how, retention, that kind of thing. And then we need to look at our people.
Yeah.
Like those are the big 4.
Yep.
But we need more than 4.
There would probably be room for, depending on the industry, of course, there might be a safety standard operating objective. There might be a quality standard operating objective. In some, there might also be like supply chain and tracking that because that's super important for some. There might be risk. There might be brand management.
Yeah,
and
brand reputation.
Yeah. And in some, there might be like a legal component because they are just dealing with so much of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so here's the danger is like, as I start my list and you continue your list, we could spend the rest of the podcast and we could easily come up with 20 to 25 really appropriate measures. Like you couldn't argue with any of them.
Right.
But if you were to take a bit of like a reductionistic view or maybe a roll-up view, we would really challenge the CEO and the team to say like, okay, but if you only had 5, what 5 would it be? Now, if you could add a 6th, what would be the 6th? Now, if you really needed to add a 7th and 8th, what would be the 7th? Is there a way that we can get the most comprehensive view of a business with the fewest number of standard operating objectives? And we'll get into why that's important in a bit in terms of how we actually use these in real time.
Right.
But yeah, I think that would be the challenge is, are we able to even articulate what matters most in something less than 25?
Right.
Something less than 10.
Well, and the reason would be, Keith, because then in our weekly meetings, it becomes more of a report out. And boy, we would get really bored and disengaged if we were checking in on 25 different standard operating objectives and then coming back to the thematic goal. And like that would take up most of the meeting. And so what we want is this high level view, almost like a newspaper.
Right.
Where it's like, we know that is divided up into sections. Right. It could be world, it could be sports, it could be business, it could be local. And you're going to find some things within there that are more specific. In sports, it could be football, baseball score, all of that. And so we want to take the highest level view we can, but and go down a little bit from there as opposed to way down in the weeds.
Right.
Now,
somebody listening to this might be thinking to themselves, like, we're missing something really important. Like you really do need to have the data. Like, we want to be a data-driven organization. We really do need to track these ratios. These things matter.
Right.
And I think our response to that would be, an executive team is where all of the functions and business units of the organization get integrated together.
Right.
And each member of that executive team is going to be representing some business unit or some shared service or some function. And at that next level, they're going to have their own standard operating objectives. And the next one, they're going to have their own standard operating objectives. So at some point, say if I'm the COO and I've got a productivity measure, somebody that's my direct report is probably going to have quality for a metric, and somebody else might have supply chain. And somebody that reports up to this supply chain person is going to then get into, like the deeper dive ratio of the percentage of goods coming from different, proper mix. The business is tracking those details somewhere.
Right.
But at the executive team level, if we try to bring too many, then it's going to be too much noise and not enough signal. And so I think the idea of the roll up, to keep it simple at the top, is really critical.
Yeah. So what's the danger, Keith, if we over focus on just the standard operating objectives?
Yeah. I think we see that a lot, and we're going to look at both extremes here. But I think by over focusing on only standard operating objectives, and especially if we have too many of them, and especially if they tend to be lagging indicator objectives, which they often are, then I think we end up just getting into sort of a business as usual, report out, take one lap through the business every week. And we see this all the time. It ends up being a little bit of a talent show where, we go through slide after slide after slide of too many different metrics. And we focus in on the metric, but we're not really seeing the patterns or the trends. And we lose sight of the rally cry.
Right.
Like, hey, not everything is of equal importance. And we might suddenly be talking a lot about, new product development at a time that safety has emerged as the real problem.
Right.
Or we're over focused on employee satisfaction when customer satisfaction is the thing that we should be more focused on. So I think we get complacent by taking a broad view, and we miss what's actually most important right now.
Yeah. The example that comes to mind, although I don't know them very well, would be the BlackBerry phone, which, like, lagging indicators would show that this is great. We're kicking butt. We have great customer loyalty, but maybe their innovation wasn't there. Maybe going out and tracking competitors wasn't there. And all of a sudden they were great until all of a sudden they weren't.
Yeah.
And then what's the danger of under focusing on standard operating objectives?
Yeah, I think it sounds like it's a similar danger, which is we get so focused on what's critical right now that we start to lose the overall scope of the business.
Right.
And it's almost like, focus of the month.
Yeah.
Or whack-a-mole.
Strategy of the month. Yeah.
Strategy of the month. And we're not stepping back to take sort of a comprehensive, balanced scorecard approach to the overall business.
Right.
And we're likely to miss something really important because we're overly focused on the thing that's urgent, but maybe not as important.
Yeah. Now, you and I have...
And now I think... I'm sorry, there's one more thought, is I think CEOs can become overly complacent there because they assume that their direct reports are tracking that stuff. And suddenly there's a surprise.
Right.
And we've seen that with a client recently. We're like, they're so focused on growth, and all of a sudden they realize like, whoa, cash flow is a major problem.
Yeah.
Well, where did that problem emerge? It's like, well, the ops team that was so focused on growth was so keen on getting enough raw material that they had no outages, that all of a sudden they were way overextended in cash.
Yeah.
And so they just got overly focused on what was critical in the moment, but they lost sight of something looming.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then sometimes we see where this a standard operating objective actually becomes the focus in the thematic goal.
Yeah.
Right. And so an example I had was a company that needed to have safety be really high, and actually their safety record went down to the point where somebody said, okay, I'm going to the hospital too much to see our guys.
Yeah.
Like this is just, we're doing this too often. I'm having to talk to too many wives. We've got to like do something about safety. And so they brought that up to a rally cry and really focused on it and got way better. In fact, they had a whole year of 0 missed days, which was amazing. And then it became like, okay, we've put some things in place that this should continue, and it went back down to kind of normal standard operating objectives.
Right. Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, but then they realized, okay, our focus now should be on growth, and we've got to enter into new marketplaces, and so growth became more of a thematic goal. It's not that safety became unimportant. It actually was like, no, this high level of safety is the bar now, and it will always be important to us.
Yeah. It's almost like, if that's what's most important all the time, that is a fantastic place to look for the next rally cry.
Yeah.
So, sometimes the rally cry comes to us from the outside, like, hey, the rally cry is like an acquisition opportunity, or some major product launch. But yeah, very often, if we have the right set of a balanced scorecard, standard operating objectives, that's going to be where we mine and look for the next theme of where we need to see step change. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Keith, we would also say that these should be fairly tied to the strategic anchors, correct?
Yeah. So shout out to Kevin Toomey, our principal consultant colleague. He's in Atlanta. We were talking about this recently at one of our get-togethers.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, look, so strategic anchors, that's what answers the question, how are we going to succeed? It's the best candidate for articulating how we differentiate ourselves from our competitors.
Yep.
And so if you have an anchor, that anchor better show up in your standard operating objectives. It was like, oh yeah, that, I never thought of it that way, but of course it needs to. And, just take a generic example of, say, our one of our strategic anchors is around product leadership, whether it's innovation or first to market, inventing new products. Then let's look at their standard operating objectives. If all they're measuring is safety and growth and revenue and customer sat and employee sat, it's like, where's your objective around product leadership?
Yeah.
Now, we might get to this in a second, but sometimes it's like, well, how would you even measure that? Like, that seems kind of qualitative. And it's like, yeah, there might be some data like a Gartner matrix if you happen to be in, the right industry that has one of those that shows where you are. Or it might be something like, I don't know, market or, percentage of your revenue from new product. But it could also just simply be a gut feel of from the executive team as it reflects on all of the product or the customer conversations they've had. Like, where does our product stand against our competitors? Red, yellow, green. Are we a product leader?
Right. And are we doing things going back to BlackBerry?
Yeah.
Are we doing things to stay a product leader?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, another example is, like Southwest Airlines that had one of their strategic anchors around like on-time departures.
Yep.
So clearly that was a metric that was in their standard operating objectives, and it was one that they continued to track. And then, at times it's like, wow, Delta or another airline would be doing better than they were.
Yeah.
And so that idea of like, are we talking every week about the very things that we say are going to help us succeed?
Right.
And that's the advantage of having that in there. So, if we're brainstorming what our anchors should be, or our app objectives should be, let's look at that balanced scorecard. Let's look at those big categories. Then let's do a walkthrough of our strategic anchors and say, where is that reflected in our standard operating objectives?
Right. And then Keith, when we're in a meeting and we're going through this scorecard, what's your opinion on, is it a report out from the person who leads that function? Or is it something the whole team is talking about? Like, take us and maybe grading red, yellow, or green. Is there a big debate on that? Like, what is this, again, more like, is this a siloed report out?
Yeah.
Or is this kind of a scrum with the team?
Yeah. I think it's more of a scrum.
Yeah,
now,
I agree with you.
That assumes that first of all, as a team, you've come up with the shortest list that you can that gives you the broadest view.
Yep.
That the first couple of weeks that you're using this, you actually had a bit of a debate about how are we going to assign a red, yellow, or green to this.
Yep.
But once that's set, kind of you have that baseline, I think it's every week to saying like, okay, at a glance, has something changed in our standard operating objectives? Let's look at them one at a time and get a gut feel of the group.
Yep.
And obviously, if it's like a financial metric, and if you're the CFO and you've just run the report, everybody's going to look to you and you're going to say, well, we're up 10%. And it's like, okay, so we're up 10%, but is that red, yellow, or green? That might be red because I thought we were going to be up 20%.
Right.
Or it might be green because it's like, hey, we were expecting to be flat. So this is awesome.
Right.
So the red, yellow, green collectively, I like that scrum idea of like, are we on the same page that we're okay or we're not okay? Or we're kind of confused and curious about where we are today.
Right.
On this. I've got a client here in Chicago that they're in like the music industry and event spaces. And so like one of their standard operating objectives is literally like vibe. Like what's the vibe?
Yeah.
Is it a good vibe? And it's like, how do you measure vibe? It's like, well, if you're in that industry, Yeah.
The point being, you don't necessarily measure vibe.
Right.
But you know.
Yeah. And it's like collectively they've all been maybe that week or that month, they've all visited a couple of those different places, and they're like, they look around the table, they're like, I think it's green.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's green? Well, I read this, article online. I read this review. It's like, boy, people look like they're having a blast.
Yes.
It's like, okay, well then it's green. Nothing to talk about.
Yes.
So, I've always loved that example of, it is a collective group, look around the table and agree, are we worried about this? Are we not worried about this? Is there something here to talk about? Red, yellow, green.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the person who's leading that standard operating objective might give their thoughts first, but it doesn't prevent other people from jumping in and doing it first, right, or jumping in after and going, I disagree, or I think you're right. We want it to be more than a report out.
Right.
But we also can't take up the time to go to the 10 people on the team. What do you think on this one? And, go
right
around the room.
No.
But we do want to, it's not a siloed report out either.
Right. Yes. And especially if you have executives leaving the room and doing this at the next level down and the next level down, that it's sort of a collective roll up each week of, based on the things that you're looking at in your area and how that rolls up to what we're looking at collectively. what's our gut feel on this? Another great example of that is there's always some kind of a people standard operating objective. Sometimes we want ENPS if they're actually measuring that. Sometimes it's like employee engagement. But we've had clients say, well, I don't want employee engagement because we only measure that once a year. And it's like, okay, but let's still put like employee engagement, like how engaged are people? We might do a once a year survey, but collectively looking around the room, what's your sense?
Yeah.
How are the people doing?
Yeah.
And usually there's some anecdotal things that are informing it. And again, back to a point we made earlier, we're not discounting the use of data and actually tracking things and having reports. We're just saying at that executive level, we're getting the at a glance.
Right. And we're not going to do that on a weekly basis. But it doesn't mean we don't have a gut feel or a sense.
Right.
And just like we could, if I went to you, Keith, and said like, hey, how's your family? How are your kids doing? You don't need a survey well, hold on. Let me give them a one-page survey and I'll get back to you.
Let me check Power School and do a quick download of the grades from this week. Because they had, they're reaching like 4 or 5 classes. And so it's like, no, that's not what I asked.
Yes.
I could get you that data if you need it. It's like, now, how are they doing?
Yeah.
Any concerns?
Yeah.
That's a great analogy.
And that's what we're looking for in all of the standard operating objectives.
Yeah. James, talk a little bit. We haven't covered enough the idea of leading and lagging indicators. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, I think the challenge is a lot of times with standard operating objectives, we're looking in the rearview mirror. And we're tracking things that we can't necessarily change right away. And so we like this leading indicator focus because we want to be looking through the front of the car as opposed to the rear view mirror and affecting change where we can before things go off the rails.
Right.
I don't know. What would you add to that?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a mix of both.
Yep.
I think most financial metrics are probably lagging because they're like the ultimate outcome of the work we've done.
Yep.
And so, I would look at your standard operating objectives and just take note. Is this a leading or a lagging?
Yeah.
And if they're all lagging, then I would then take it to the next level and say, okay, well, as we evaluate that one, what are the leading things that we should be focused on and talking about that's going to lead to those kinds of results? So, the classic one from revenue, it's like, well, how's the pipeline?
Yeah.
The pipeline comes before the sale. Okay, good. Well, what about sales activity? How is the sales activity going?
Right.
How well, this is one that came up recently for us, is, really critical in this business is how well operations and sales teams collaborate together because they're selling a very intensive service. And so it's like there has to be tight coordination between ops and sales. And so like I would have that as a standard operating objective.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How's the ops and sales coordination going?
Yeah.
Because if that's going well and it's green and we're doing the kinds of things that we need to do all the time, then what we can expect to see would be customer loyalty as well as higher growth.
Yeah.
But if we're waiting to customer, what do you call it when you lose a customer? Like
churn,
customer churn. It's like, wow, customer churn. That's way too late. We've already lost him.
Exactly.
Let's build some standard operating objectives around the things that prevent customer churn.
Right.
Yeah.
And we haven't said this explicitly, but we do want to say these should be simple.
Yes.
We said don't make too many of them. Get yourself out of the weeds a little bit. Keep this simple because what we're trying to do is flag things that are red, that are out of the norm.
Yeah.
If we get too complex, it might be a little challenging to do that week after week.
Yeah.
We might lose energy. And I guess what's inherent in all of this as well, Keith, is vulnerability-based trust.
Yeah.
Because this isn't about a report or a spreadsheet or some kind of data that is pointing something out. This is our own conversations and being willing to say something that might be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And especially if it's somebody else's kind of standard operating objective,
Right. Right.
And we need to have that trust and lack of defensiveness to target those and bring those to the surface.
Right. Right.
And it might be in my own area, and I should just be open and honest about that as well, as opposed to trying to cover my weakness or my shortcomings in a specific area.
As you're saying that, the thought that I'm having is, as we kind of wrap up this conversation, is maybe the place to start would be to put on the CEO hat.
Yes.
And say, if you were the CEO of this company,
yes,
what matters most? And then have a kind of a short brainstorm. And don't think about Excel spreadsheets and metrics and ratios. Just think about what matters most.
Yeah.
And it would be something along the lines of, well, what matters most is that, we do need to be growing. We need to have high quality products.
Yeah.
We said we're the product leader, so we need to have new products that are dominating the market. Our customers need to love it. We need really talented people. Yeah, that's important. The work we're doing is dangerous. Like, we fabricate stuff, so we need to be safe and take care of people. We're putting a lot of money into these factories, so we need to be efficient, make sure we're making good use of those things. It's like, okay, great. So let's just stop with those 7. Those are the standard operating objectives. Now, on a weekly basis, if I'm the CEO, I'm going to say, okay, I actually want a pretty good feel for where we are on these things. So I'd like everybody to think about how you could measure those in advance of the meeting, and then bring to the meeting just your gut feel insight as to where we are.
Yeah.
And now if we're having a problem, okay, then we open up those Excel spreadsheets. Then we start to dig in and do analysis. And I think that's backwards from the way it usually happens. When we say standard operating objectives, usually somebody opens up a giant Excel spreadsheet.
Yes.
And they start to show us ratios and metrics, and they're almost all financial, and it's too complicated. And then they want to review that every week. And so we would say, okay, let's step back.
Yeah. And that CEO hat is getting me to giving me the thought of, boy, this is about leadership development. This is about, if people are disengaging in this, then if I was CEO, it'd be like, oh, okay, that person just wants to stay in their silo, and that's great. They might be, but they're, I'm thinking about succession planning. And if they're disengaged in this moment and thinking I should be the one who knows all this stuff, then that's probably not a great leadership development.
Yeah.
Or it's a moment for leadership development, actually, is really what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody at that table has to be thinking of themselves as integrating all the different parts of the business.
Exactly.
And that's probably the best tool to think about how the pieces integrate is the list of standard operating objectives.
Yes. Awesome. This has been great, Keith.
Yeah. So let's rethink these standard operating objectives. Let's spend some more time with them. Let's be a little bit more intentional and aggressive in getting clear on these things. Let's try to avoid these mistakes that we've talked about today, and we'll do better. If you're a client listening to this, that's our commitment to you. We're going to spend a little bit more time looking at these things because we ignore them at our peril. And if we really embrace them, I think it can unlock some amazing opportunities.
Yes.
So that's probably good enough for today, James. Why don't we wrap it up?
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on the Organizational Health Advantage. We certainly hope that you come back and listen again. Go ahead and like and share this episode, and we hope to see you next time. That's all for now.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Org Health Advantage. Your hosts, Keith and James, are helping leaders change the world of work and invite you to share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. For more resources on building stronger teams and organizational health, check out tablegroup.com.